Hi everyone, it's Pastor Amy here in McGolrick Park with my weekly reflection. This morning I was having text study with a colleague of mine. We try and do that every Tuesday. A group of pastors from the area meet and we look at the readings for Sunday and we talk about what we might preach to people on Sunday morning. And as we were turning the page of the Bible to the first reading from Amos, the prophet Amos, we saw a heading in the Bible that stuck out to us. It said, "Complacent self-indulgence will be punished." I guess it spoke to us as a word that maybe our own society needs to hear a bit more of, this speaking against complacent self-indulgence. In the reading from the prophet Amos, Amos has a vision. He sees the Lord standing in the midst of the people holding a plumb line. Now, I'm not a builder by any means, and so I've never actually used a plumb line. And who really uses a plumb line these days with all the modern technology we have to build things? But a plumb line was a weight on the end of a string that builders would use to determine whether a structure was standing perfectly upright or whether things had gone slightly askew. The metaphor in this passage from Amos is that as God holds this plumb line in the midst of the people, it is clear that things in Amos's society have gone ass over tea kettle. And it was Amos's job as the prophet to go and to speak to those who were in power and point out the way that they were leading the people and creating systems that were in direct opposition to what God willed for the world. You can imagine that this is a difficult job and not much appreciated. And Amos is sent not just to the margins of society, but directly to the heart of the seat of power. He goes right to the Holy Temple and confronts the priest Amaziah with the words that God has given. And Amaziah, being smart and a shrewd leader, knows how to sort of distract and create a smokescreen. So he doesn't tell Amos that he disagrees with the message that he's giving, but what he does say is that perhaps this isn't the right time and place for you to be speaking these words. Maybe you should go somewhere else. Don't rock the boat where I live and work, and certainly not here in the king's sanctuary. It isn't civil. It isn't right. It makes me think a lot about the things going on in our own society that I think are quite askew of what God wills for us. You think about the children being separated from their families at the border, and now we don't even know how to reunite them with their parents, and a 1-year-old being propped up in immigration court and the judge having to ask if they understand the proceedings that are going on. I mean, it's absurd if it wasn't actually happening. And we think about the persistent racism that manifests in police shootings of unarmed black men and school shootings and cuts to health care and Medicare and SNAP benefits for those who need it most. If God were holding up a plumb line in our society, I think the verdict would be the same as in Amos's, that things are definitely going askew of what God wills for our well-being and for the abundant life that God promises for all people. Excuse me, a little bit of the pollen in the air here caught me in the throat. And then we have people like Maxine Waters and Elizabeth Warren and others who are pointing out the need for us to go and to confront those in power with how their policies are going far afield of what is upright and just. And those in power are using the same tactics as they always have. They are pointing out, or they're using the premise of civility to vilify those who are speaking out against these injustices, and any who would call them to task for the chaos and the intentional disregard for the obligation to care for the least among us. It's not the time, it's not the place. Be reasonable. Climbing the Statue of Liberty on our most sacred day is is thoughtless and selfish, or making people from the administration feel uncomfortable when they're at dinner with their families is tantamount to violence. Go somewhere else and speak, or wait for the right time, but this is certainly not the right time. The tactics are the same as they were in Amos's time: to vilify, to delegitimize, to distract. But Amos and other prophetic voices can't be silenced. He's clear that his calling is not just a job that he can do anywhere. It must be here. It must be where the powers sit who are neglecting their duties. And he tells the prophet Amaziah that this call from God came in the midst of his ordinary life. He says, I'm just an ordinary farmer and an arborist, but God plucked me from the midst of that ordinary job to come here and to confront you because we can see that this is not what God wants for this world. So my question for us this week to ponder as we go about our ordinary lives is, what might God be calling us to speak or to do when we see how things in our world are not quite upright and just in the way that God wants, or even that we desire for our society? What might God be calling you to do or to say, and to whom? The time is now. It's not some other time and place. And if you want to hear more about the conviction against complacency and complacent self-indulgence, there is a time and a place where we'll continue this conversation, and that's on Sunday morning at 11. So I invite you to join us for worship then, or continue to be part of the conversation here. Thank you for listening today. God's peace be with you.